Welcome back. This is the morning show here on Signature TV. Today we're going to be talking about the rising rate of poverty among rural dwellers, and we have with us an economist and a policy scholar, Dr. Stanislaus Ukeje. Good to have you. Thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good day.
All right. I mean, there's a whole lot that I've spoken about poverty in the rural areas. You know, specifically giving what we are facing. If you look at the statistics, it's really not looking good. Right from 2015 up until this moment, I mean, we've always had a dwindling issue regarding poverty. In 2027, in fact, according to the World Bank, they're saying that more Nigerians would, be poor by 2027. So you wonder what is really causing poverty in the rural areas.
Well, in science, in physics, it says that matter is indestructible. It can change form, but it remains the same. In the same manner, the resources available in the world are finite. As population grows, what is available per person diminishes. That is why, like Jesus said, there will always be poor people around you. Poverty is, I wouldn't say it is created, but it's something of the mind. What are the things that a human being requires? Basically, food to be able to live, clothing to cover, to keep warm, shelter from the elements. It does appear to me that the concept of poverty that is widely advertised is in relation to extravagance. You know, everybody, why should the Queen of England live in a Buckingham Palace while other people live in a tin house? That Buckingham Palace, it cannot be available to everybody. But you may say, why? If it's not available to everybody, let everybody stay in a shed. Well, it becomes a matter of power. So, what we should be aiming at is protection from lack of these basics: sufficient food, adequate clothing, adequate shelter. You know, when you have a fort is like a defensive building. You build it to defend maybe a commander, to defend the equipment for the defense of the community. But if you build a fort for somebody who has no property, it's a waste. But again, who will want to hear it? So the existence of poverty is like a foretold occurrence. It's a foretold occurrence. It's not exactly, but we need to define it properly to be able to appreciate what poverty is, because we may be taking other people's definition of poverty. People of my age, when we were young, what people call poverty now was standard.
Really?
Yeah, because we went to school, we didn't wear shoes. And it was not like you are going from Richard Street to Rudy Road. Some of us went to school on, sandy road. That's about 2 kilometers from where we were living. So you felt the hotness of the road. But there was no other way. We had only one pupil whose father was, I think, health officer. They used to bring her with a car. But people didn't mind. We could just see the car stop, drop her, come and pick her. But the majority, even the teachers, some of them came on foot. There are a few who had their bicycle. So if we go to the Bible, it says contentment, godliness with contentment is great gain. Nobody, the surplus that some people have cannot be available to everybody.
But then the level today, we're talking $2.5. It used to be $1 or 1.5.
Say that again.
The how it is rated, how poverty is rated right now, beyond what you have said about shelter, clothing, and food, that you would have to be able to feed for at least $2.5 in a day. That most Nigerians live below $2.5 in a day, and because of that, they are actually poor. Now, if you look at the standard of poverty across rural areas in Nigeria, one would have thought that because they are very close to fertile lands, and agriculture plays a huge role, when it comes to, poverty. A country would survive mostly on the agricultural produce, the export, and the production from their soil. So you would think that because they are close to arable lands, it's easy for them to cultivate crops and then feed themselves. Why do you think that there is still poverty in rural areas, in places where, those lands are fertile and people there are not using the opportunity that they have around them?
Well, there are segmentation of needs. When children are infants, and I'm not trying to, categorize poverty. When children are infants, they are expected to have some level of nutrition so that they don't become stunted. For you now, like I can see you're tall. If maybe it's genetic, your parents may be tall. But if, in spite of that, if you were not properly fed at infancy, you will not attain the heights you have attained. So many people you see that are very short is because they did not eat adequate nutrition when they were infants. When you are a youth, a teenager, you're in secondary school, there are some level of calories you require to be able to make the effort required to play, to read, to walk. When you become a young adult, you may no longer require that type of food. You require just adequate. This is to place what is required or what is needed. But many people don't know it, and the government itself or the public sector doesn't appear to make provision to ensure that people at different levels of their life have adequate nutrition. Like very old people, what they require is geriatric medicine, the medicine for the old. But you go to the hospital, you don't find it. I think there is only one clinic in Nigeria, in the University College Hospital in Ibadan. And it was donated by late Tony Anene. He gave money to build a geriatric clinic where you attend to old people who have arthritis, who have this, is special medicine to give them relief in their old age. When you go to pediatric hospitals, there are, scales for weighing children to know whether their weight is adequate for their age and height. And then things are recommended. But if you recommend food and there is no food, what will people do? So knowledge is also important. If everybody has that knowledge, and that's why when people talk about education and say government is constructing schools, you can construct a school, but there is no learning going on there. There are certain knowledge that should be available to people. That's why you find UNICEF and some of these bodies talking about adequate breastfeeding for infants. What they should eat, allow them to play, give them clean water, so that they can grow. When people are at young age, what they should be doing. Allow them to play, allow them to run around, eat well, but not too much. But you find that those who eat well in Nigeria are people who have overgrown the need to eat. So we develop a big stomach, big waist. Sometimes it is carryover of hunger. What we didn't eat when we were young is what we are eating now. And at the same time, depriving young people of food. So it's the same thing with clothing. You know, you may find St. Michael's, all kinds of carving, you know, selling all kinds of dresses. Stars appear, you know, every day they appear, they wear a new dress. Every day they appear, they wear a new dress. Some of them give away those dresses after using them, maybe for concert. But for some of us, if you go to our homes, you see piles and piles of dress.
Okay, do you think that we should describe our own states of poverty as against what the World Bank is saying about the fact that it must have to be $2.5 per day?
You know that human beings work together. You may discover that in the urban areas, you may see a beggar, and you give him some money. You know, it doesn't cost you much. But in the rural areas, you will not have that. Everybody appear to be at the same level or struggling. So maybe if you go to people's homes, they may give you food. If they have, you share it with them. So you will find that the poverty appears to have a domicile in communities that lack so much. In communities where there are plenty, you know, you'll find people, they will come to Signature TV. So we want to give money to children, we want to give them food, come with your camera to cover us. You know, you go, you cover them, they give. Another group of people see what Signature TV have covered, they will come and say, we want to go to a girls' school, to give them sanitary pads, to give them this, to give them that. But those things are not available in the rural areas. So that's why you find a classification in which rural poverty is higher than urban poverty. It doesn't mean that poverty in the urban areas is a good. It's only that is here, it is domicile. Here you may find a variety of people, rich, poor, this. So even housing. You go to the rural areas, some people who have enough housing, they don't live there. They lock it up. Those who don't have houses, you know, just stay around in shelter. But why you find these reports about poverty is that fiscal policy ought to modify asset holding. Fiscal policy ought to modify asset holding. In the US, you may find somebody who has a house. When the mortgage or the tax on the housing is high, he will give up the house and rent. When the situation changes, he also goes back to engage in a mortgage. But here we don't have that kind of situation. Although we have taxation, but sometimes it's aggressive and penalty without consequences or without direction. So let's say Signature TV adopts a school in this neighborhood and says, okay, we're going to appoint a cleaner, we will get you a water dispenser. For that expenditure, the government should give you tax relief completely. In other words, that amount you have spent on that school will be non-taxable. In fact, if the things are done properly, government will match what you have done. If you spend 1 million on that school for cleaning, supply of clean water, employment of a health superintendent, the government will give you an additional $1 million to make sure that you upgrade what you are doing. That is fiscal policy. So, but the more you see, maybe you have very smooth highways in the cities. When you go to that smooth highway, you will see my 20-year-old car. Any new car, or most new cars you see on the road belong to government and government-related people. So the expenditure is on the consumption of government and its allies, while the people are left. And as people aspire to live like those in government, they leave the little things they can do to help themselves, because they think that planting a mango, waiting for it to ripe, selling it, will not enable them to buy Prado Jeep. But everybody can be riding Prado Jeep. If you eat well, ride a bicycle if you can, walk if you have the strength, it's okay. That's why I'm saying that, the perception of poverty is also a problem. But the signal from government is also not good. Because people in government are servants. I can't imagine you employing a servant who drives Prado from your money. You ask him that there should be a divorce.
Indeed. But there's policies that government can embark upon in order to stem the tide of poverty, because it's not even looking good. It hasn't looked good in the last 10 years. And the report also stated that by 2027, Nigerians will be poorer. So are there specific things that this government can do, or even individuals on their own, that they can do in order to stem the tide of slipping into poverty? Because these days, in fact, they say we don't even have a middle class. It's either you're rich or you are poor.
I talked about fiscal policy. There are things that government can do. If government changes its own behavior, its own consumption behavior, it will free resources. You can have, maybe the government has a presidential lodge at Nsukka, presidential lodge at Abani, presidential lodge at Ojiriba. How many presidents do we have in the country? Those houses or those lodges become a hiding place for operators in government. If you cut off those things, you will free money. If they also lower their own consumption, it will free money. Then, if they assist people who are in active work to produce better, let's take Signature Television, for instance. Assuming that the government sees what you do and say, okay, we want you to install a free-to-air transmitter in Enugu. You say, well, we can't afford it. He said, no problem. We are going to give it to you. All what we demand from you is that 4 hours every day, you will do health education, general health education, telling people to screen for cancer, screen for hepatitis, screen for malaria regularly. Maybe the cost of producing the graphics will be yours, but the transmitter will be your own. Any advertisement you earn, advertising income you earn on that transmitter, you can keep it. It's tax-free. But do it. That's a help.
Absolutely.
If there are communication students who are asked to come to your place to learn how to do interviews, how to work, how to manage, and the government pays them a stipend, so that you carry them on without carrying additional cost.
Yeah. Let's
say the government wants to build roads in a city. It spends 6 months. You go to the geography department of the state university and say, look, we want to do a survey of this city to know the lowest point, the highest point, so that when we build our roads, we will be directing the water flow to that lowest point, and then what to use the water for. But they don't do it. It may take a longer time to build, but it will last. In other words, you engage the people more. Because if you engage the geography department in survey, many people will want to study geography. But if you leave them there, people will say, what are you studying geography? What for? You want to create local government, you want to create districts, you ask the Department of History and Anthropology to tell you how people are related. They do the study and come out and tell you that you see this community here and this community here, they are related, but they move their parts over something. That if you don't put them together, they will be pulling together, and therefore be disrupting any community you put them in. So engaging people in meaningful work and making their talents pay is a means of reducing poverty. A means of reducing poverty. You know, the food we eat, which our people can produce, akede, achicha, abacha. When you go to government banquets, you don't see it. We import Basati rice. In other words, you undervalue our own output and overvalue the output of other people. That is how to get things done. If government is going to be using a type of vehicle, you make it a policy that this vehicle will be used continuously for the next 20 years, and therefore the manufacturer should come, set up a plant, train mechanics, and we continue to use it. But if you make a pious governor, he uses Mercedes. When Stan becomes governor, he uses BMW. You know, the whole place is littered with vehicles that are not used. That's not how economies grow. Singapore, Iran, they didn't behave that way, and that's why they are where they are today. So there are too much of personal desire being projected as public policy by people in government, and there is no control.
Do you think that we can deploy technology in solving poverty issues, and how do you think we can do that?
Oh, certainly. Like I use the word aspiration. You know, if you watch young children around you, they will tend to imitate you. If you always touch your beards, even those little children who have no beards, they will be doing like this. They will say, when I grow up, I'll be like Charles. So, we are imitators. God has finished creation. Human beings imitate those who are, visible. In the 1990s, the World Bank introduced a program they called Poverty Reduction Strategy to guide government. And they said, before we can give you support, you should prepare a poverty reduction strategy paper. We will look at it and see where we can help you. But what you will find is glamour. Government is building a Tower of Babel, painting this. Those things attract people from useful work to become onlookers. And I think I can say, I can go where what I hear, yeah, Bawa. Somebody have borrowed Timbu, or Timbu one age something. And the eating one is not productive, it's just consumptive. They redistribute the income. And those people who manage to get money through being sycophants, what they do is to try to consume like the people who gave them the money. They go and buy a used car, paint it, put horn, move around. Before you know it, if their sponsor disappears, they themselves will crash. In our homes, we try to avoid poverty. If maybe my father had 20 children, I'll try to have 3 or 2. Because I knew that maybe when we were 20, many people were sleeping on the corridor. Some people will go to other people's house to sleep, so to find accommodation. You don't repeat it, but it is for the government to enable people to find the means of livelihood. Another way of reducing poverty is to create forum for volunteers. In this area, for instance, there are hundreds of medical doctors who have retired from formal work, but those people can do a lot of good if they are given opportunity to volunteer. They can look at, say, Queen School and say, this Queen School, the standard there is high. You recruit the best students to go to Queen's. You recruit the best students to go to Okonalo Girls or, such schools. We will go there to give them school health talk and attention. Don't pay me. Just provide cotton wool, water, you know, disinfectants. When I come, I ask the children to open their mouths, you know, look into it, see their teeth. Maybe I'll come once a week. A lot of poverty will be reduced because when children are ill in school, the schools send them home to go to their parents for treatment when they may not have money. There are volunteers who can do so many things. So volunteerism is good. When people volunteer, you help them, you honor them, you protect them. That's why you find Bill Gates being talked about all over the world, because he's volunteering. It was volunteers that reduced the incidence of tapeworm in Ebonyi. It was sponsored by Jimmy Carter. So a lot of things can, I mean, there are people who can volunteer to be teachers in school. A lot of good people, people who are brilliant in mathematics, they are retired or they don't have a job. But you give them a volunteer system, then it will begin to work. I think when Meko Merwa was governor of Old Anambra State, there was a volunteer service scheme. People came, volunteered to do certain things for government or for the public. Chief Ukeje, he was a volunteer road safety man, and everybody knew him as a volunteer, and he did it very well. He did it enthusiastically. In the past, there used to be volunteer policemen. They call them police Eliza. They come in the evening, they control traffic and free the proper policemen to do crime fighting.
Right. Again, we have seen a lot of these poverty alleviation programs over the years. I mean, I can't remember the amounts of times we've had different governments come in and they bring out certain programs to alleviate poverty. One would have thought that by now, if that program were to be used to take people out of poverty, the numbers would have been reducing, but it does look like the number is going the other way around. I'm just thinking, really, do you think those poverty alleviation programs, did any good to us?
I think it's a misnomer to call what the government does poverty alleviation program, because a program should last for a long time. What they do is photo opportunity for poverty alleviation, actually projects. You get thousands of grinding machines to distribute to people. What are they going to grind?
Tomatoes.
Where is the fuel to run the grinding machine? You meet people at their point of their need. At the point of their need. A young person who is strong, you give the person a motorcycle to be running motorcycle transport. You are taking him away from agriculture. You are taking him away from a lot of things. Sometimes you expose them to drug use because they meet hard people on the road and adopt their ways. What you need to do is to meet people at their point of need. Let us say that you go to an area. In the past, almost all the okra consumed in the what you may call the southeast now was grown along the corridor from Uboka to Aniri up to Otankpa and Umahe. But now we bring okra from Bauchi and Gombe. There can be no better poverty alleviation program than returning to those places and giving them seedlings, guaranteeing prices, providing adequate transport and routes for their business. You get what I mean? Those things that people do, like people who make earthenware from Oha, from Ini, it is the same thing that brings this. It is only the level of firing. if you meet the people at their point of their work and say, yes, Ukeje, eating pot. Now, the eating pot is no longer fashionable, but it can be good for decoration. But can you move into this level of production, plates, drinking cups? What you need is a kiln to fire it. You need this for coloring. Everybody should know how. It cannot be one person, one kiln. We are going to build a kiln in your community. We will get somebody from IMT or GTC who is a manager of the kiln. In the first 4 years, nobody will pay anything. Just come and use the kiln. The government will pay. After 4 years, we will evaluate your performance and say, okay, you will start owning it. You now own it and pay the manager. You have changed their lifestyle. Mm-hmm. The same thing with maybe clothes making. You look at people, they are wearing rags, but they are tailors, but they can't find enough work to do because the textile is expensive. You build a textile village or a tailoring village and say, okay, we are going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4 equipment. It is by division of labor that you increase output. You should not try to be a bespoke tailor that you cut, you sew, you need everything. No. We want to, if you want to specialize in buttonholing, that's what you will do. So we will give you enough job. You want to be cutting, okay, you want to cut collar, you want to cut cuffs, you will learn that job. A student who is a full-time student can take time out every week to go and do cutting for shirts, cut for sleeves. Then you even stimulate students to go around the city and take measurement of people. That is why sometimes when we buy shirts made maybe abroad, it doesn't fit us because our structure is different from their structure. But there's no statistics. No one person can collect that statistics, but government can do it and say, on the average, 40-year-old men in Nigeria are of this arm length, leg length, middle length or middle size. When you go to that yellow pages, you see it, and then you produce dresses that will fit most people. You get what I mean?
Yes, I
so
understand
the infrastructure for production is not only road and building. There are soft infrastructure, data, and if you spend time, if government spends effort in public health, educating people how to prevent malaria, prevent typhoid, then the medical doctors will not be running away. If you go to other countries, a medical doctor may come to his clinic and see maybe 10 people in a day. So he has time to read journals, take statistics, write reports, feel a sense of himself. But when you come to work in the morning and you see 2,000 people waiting for one doctor, even the doctor himself will become ill. And when the doctor is ill, then the whole community is ill.
Right. Do you think poverty is used as a weapon by the political class in order to perpetuate themselves in power?
Yeah, it perpetuates itself when the circle is not broken. Like I told you, you see around the Enugu now, anywhere you see manual labor, it's mostly people from the north.
Manual labor?
It's the contractors that hire them, road digging, because maybe they don't bargain for higher pay.
Okay.
The state government will give somebody a job, then he hires people from the north. Because if you go to artisans, you will see many of them. These are children from poor homes, because in most of their communities, it is not expected that a girl will reach the age of puberty in her father's house. So in their villages, once a girl is nearing puberty, she's married away. She has maybe 1, 2, 3 children. Another girl gets to puberty, they divorce that one, And then the children grow up, either going to religious school, and then they find their way. It is actually the people you see here, I mean the honest people, are helped by their friends who are maybe trailer drivers. They bring them down here free. Some of them bring their friends who are handicapped and station them in places to beg. These are what the Ministry of Social Development should be doing. But now people export their friends from their villages to strange places. You come to the middle of a highway, you see some people who are disabled. It's their friends that bring them in the morning and come to collect them in the evening. Sometimes they collect tax from them. They pay them, or they get a pay for bringing them and taking them back. But the cycle, the source of the production of this surplus population has not been broken, because you will find that maybe in the southwest and the southeast, most girls and boys go to school and they don't leave school till about age 25. That means delayed fertility, and that delayed fertility means reduction in the rate of growth of population. Where people do not go to school, especially girls, the fertility rate is high. The average girl maybe has 4 children, average. In places where girls go to school, the average girl may have 1, 2. Some may say they don't want to get even married, or they want to get married, they don't want a child, because they want to be career people. So the source of the injection in the national poverty picture has not been broken. But when you talk about it, they say you are challenging tradition. So the solution may be restructuring. If you want a high population, yes, have it and keep it for yourself and fend for it. But this distribution of poverty around the country is it creates lack of it creates insecurity. Because if you don't have money and you are passing by a traffic junction and people are begging you and you look away, you look like you are wicked. And in their eyes, they think that you are okay because you are able, they are not able. But they don't know that you don't have money in your pocket. It's just like, you know, given the cost of petrol now. Many people have very little fuel in their car. When they are driving and you are greeting them, they are looking at the gauge instead of looking at you. So you say, oh, the man ignored me. But the man is in panic. Although he's driving a car, but he's in panic because he doesn't have enough fuel.
So in answering this question regarding whether you feel that the government is culpable when it comes to poverty in Nigeria, do you think that it is deliberate?
I think it's a... So do you think
it is deliberate to keep the people poor?
No, it's ignorance.
Ignorance on the part of the government. They don't know how to go about it.
And the people are affected too. Ignorance. Because it's not like, how will I say it? If we have a ship, a large ship, the captain and the chief engineer, whatever they want, they scrap it from the, maybe it's wooden, they need wood, they cut some from the body of the ship and use it to roast a chicken. They keep doing it, but they are weakening the ship. It's ignorance. Like I said, if people were knowledgeable, you will be content with just not too much. If you reduce your if the people who are well off reduce their consumption and save, that saving will be available for investment. And that investment will provide employment for the unemployed. If those who have skill volunteer, that their volunteerism will help people. If those who have sufficient make donation and their donation is recognized, not that you donate money to your church, donate to your town union, donate to your family, and still you are asked to pay income tax on all the things you have acquired, then it doesn't make sense. And taxation should not be punitive. Sometimes, I think last year or 2 years ago, there was a report of some Nigerians who were keeping money in the Isles of Man and the Canary Islands because of the taxation. These are money that if they were kept in the country, then, you know, the money can be put to work. If you look at some of the statistics that have been circulating, the government have been borrowing from abroad, but there are people who can lend money to the government, not by going to the government to give him money, but if the state government is building a road from point A to point P, and it's announced publicly that this road will cost 12 billion. It will be constructed in the next 5 years. We want to fund this project through borrowing. If you have money, go to your stockbroker to buy a bond. Many people will buy because one, maybe the road passes through their town. Some people support the idea, they buy the bond, and then they earn interest. That is how Japan and Korea grew up. When Nigerians talk about public debt, they say, oh, the Japanese public debt is 1,000% of their GDP. But the money is owed to Japanese people. Our own, we are not aware, but all what we read is that the government has borrowed. You know, people in government play tennis with bank worker, you know, bank managers, you know, they give them money, or contractors come and say we are going to, it should be contractor finance. Nobody knows the amount until the statistics comes out. The road is not built, but the debt is being owed. So there are many ways in which the states or the country can become integrated by borrowing from those who have savings, paying them interest on that their savings, and creating a market for them to rediscount their bonds when they need it. Assuming that you lent money for 5 years for government to build the road from Nsuka to Ukeje. But you now have a need for that money. You go back to the stockbroker and rediscount that, so you feel happy. But when the government cannot even pay pension to its workers, gratuity is owing it, he doesn't care, who will want to lend money to it?
Interesting. So, as you know, individuals, I know that the role that individuals can play in making sure that they don't get into that seeming poverty numbers, because again, every now and then, because of the biting economic situation that we're faced with, increased pump price and everything, what role do you think individuals can play? What should an individual in Nigeria be doing now to make sure that his future is a little bit secured, is not you know, dragged into that poverty line?
It is actually for the government to lead, because individuals cannot lead themselves except they have knowledge, and if there are no obstacles on their way.
So what knowledge do you have that can help some individuals who are looking to make sure that they don't get into the poverty line?
We know individual manufactures the knowledge. It is a group thing. That let us say, for me now, I'm an economist. I know that late Dr. Pius Okibo studied by correspondence to get his first degree. In other words, he didn't go to a university to sit down. If I know it, I can apply to University of London to study maybe mathematics. Professor Chikobi also got his first degree in mathematics by studying by correspondence. That is knowledge. Many people are struggling to go to university. They are not aware that there's inadequate accommodation, there's inadequate classroom, there's inadequate library. They just want to go and do matriculation. only to get there and discover that the place is jammed. We have an open university, but it is inadequately funded. But there are open universities around the world. So knowledge can be thrown open to people. Like washing your hands before eating. People may not know because they cannot see the microbes. That's why I've said that education, the money spent on education, should not only be for construction of a building. Releasing knowledge. Zeke said, show the light and the people will follow.
So what kind of knowledge is needed?
General knowledge. General knowledge. If there are success stories, it should be made known. There's a book written by Admiral Alice Madeke. I saw it at the airport and I bought it. When I read it, I became aware. This was somebody who, he was the eldest son of his parents. He saw his father work, as a timber merchant, supplying to the railways. When it was time for him to go to secondary school, the northern region prevented people from the south from entering their secondary school. So his father had to send him back here. He studied at St. Bart's at Asata so that he can qualify. In other words, he did like repeating standard 6. Then he took entrance and went to Our Ladies on Nature. There are many success stories like that. People who came, the poverty is not like a bench where somebody sits permanently. If information is provided that Zeke was a small boy, that he was not always an old man. He went to school, he didn't dodge classes, he went to America, he remembered that his father retired, took his pension and gave it to him to enable him to fly. And he came back. Those who go abroad to study will always want to come back to help those they left behind. So the education I'm talking about is not just like writing on the board. It is for the public sector to bring out success stories. Even let's take the governor of Enugu State, for instance, now. If his true life story is told, some people can copy it if it is adequate, just like other people. Chris Ajubu has just died. May his soul rest in peace. I mean, some of us who knew him, not knew him as person to person, but how he played for a secondary school, played for academicals, played for Rangers. So one Mr. Gufere, who was a manager of Vasco da Gama, said after Chukwu's death that he approached him to join Vasco da Gama. But Chukwu told him, oh, I'm sorry, Rangers had already approached me. That's why it was an honest behavior. That is the kind of story that people should know, that honesty pays. When he went to Rangers, he didn't migrate from one club to the other.
Right.
Are you following?
Yes.
So there are so many things that can be opened to people so that they can see and follow that path.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Stanislav Ukeje, many thanks for your time and your insight on this topic, the rising rate of poverty among rural dwellers in Nigeria. Many thanks for your time, sir. I think
Ukeje TV is already breaking the cycle of poverty by bringing knowledge to people that poverty is not like a cross fixed in one place. It's just a circumstance, and you can change it by increasing your production, changing your consumption. Like Obi said, reduce consumption, increase production. Modify those things. Pay attention to those things that needs to be done, and leave the things that don't need to be done. Don't engage in excessive consumption.
Stan, many thanks again. Truly appreciate it.
It's my pleasure being here.
All right.
Signature TV, news in your pocket.